Welcome to the College Admission TV podcast. Join us for insights from education leaders on today's academic landscape. We are excited to have as our guest Andrew T. Shue, president of the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina.
Well, hey, I always love to be able to start off with your journey. And I know you have had an elaborate, long journey, very accomplished journey. And I'd love to understand, who are the mentors that helped shape your path to the presidency at College of Charleston?
Sure. So I really had many mentors, and I guess I'm just very fortunate that every organization that I worked for, I was able to find someone who would be willing to mentor me. But those are informal sort of mentors. And about 15 years ago, I joined a program known as the ACE Fellowship Program. ACE is American Council on Education, and they have these formal leadership training programs where they would select 30 senior faculty or junior administrators for a year-long leadership training where you get to shadow a university president at another campus for an entire year. So I was really lucky that I found Gordon Gee at the time. He was the president of the Ohio State University, and he's now at West Virginia, where he started back in 1981, I think, as a president. So he was already at the time one of the longest serving presidents in the country, and by now he most definitely is. But he was really my mentor for the last 15 years, and I owe a lot of my current success to his mentorship. So
how does someone get into hydraulic engineering? Now, I know I'm taking you back quite a ways, your diploma graduation back in 1980, but how do you even realize you have a passion for that?
Well, to be quite honest, I grew up in an era. I'm from China, and I'm a first generation immigrant. And when I was growing up in China, there was no such thing as what are you passionate about, or what you want to pursue as a personal goal. I quite frankly was fortunate to be able to get into any university and study anything, because my family was politically was not favored by the then government, and so really hydraulic engineering is probably a discipline that someone from a bad family background could do the least harm to the country. So that's where I ended up with. So that's sort of my story.
Well, and so you came over to the United States to go to Georgia Tech, is that right?
That's correct. So at the time, I had some extended family who left China in the mid 1940s, and one of the families ended up in Atlanta. So they helped me to get over to the stateside, and just so happened I had a cousin who at the time was also a graduate student at Georgia Tech. So he basically helped me to get to Georgia Tech.
Well, and so now, do you participate in leading campus tours? I'm sure that's partly admissions and enrollment, but do you also spend time with families?
I certainly. I don't think I participate formally. I certainly, from time to time, would talk to our tour campus tour groups, and I oftentimes actually host some of the visiting families in my office, and whoever is a potential student show up at my office, I would actually give them a free T-shirt. So,
oh, nice. That's great. Well, I'll tell you something. College of Charleston, I don't think you could ask for a more beautiful location.
I can't agree with you more. It's just we're just so fortunate where we are, and also with the beautiful historic campus we have.
Well, absolutely. So I would imagine if you can get parents and students to come to campus, the percentage of those students that now enroll probably goes up dramatically.
If we can get them to visit the campus, the likelihood that they will show up that fall is very high indeed. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what's the number one question that you get from parents, prospective families?
These days, I think the most questions we get are, what type of disciplines we offer, and what kind of careers these disciplines would lead to, and so forth, and also how do we serve the students and make sure that they're successful.
Has it been difficult to move around? Because I know you've gone, obviously you were born and lived in China, and then going to Georgia Tech, beautiful school, the Yellow Jackets, and then moving to San Jose State, being a Spartan. So you've had that journey across the country, in the South, West Coast, overseas. How has that experience really strengthened you as a president?
Well, I think personally, as far as my career is concerned, I think that experience of having been to very different cities in vastly different states really gave me a more well-rounded experience to be the leader of this campus. But obviously, for family life, that was just very tough for the children. I have 4 girls, and every time I move, it's a struggle within the family.
So when you look at College of Charleston, what are the 2 things that you think about as far as your priorities on a day-to-day basis? What are 2 things that you're thinking about constantly?
Well, on top of my head is academic excellence, and how do we serve our students, and how do we ensure student success. Those are, if you name 2 things, really, academic excellence and student success are the 2 highest priorities for our campus.
And as far as competition, there's a lot of competition. I mean, there are several people that would say post-secondary education, it's a saturated market with a lot of colleges and universities to choose from. So why College of Charleston?
So I would agree that indeed, I think this industry is getting ever more competitive and saturated. If you ask whom are we competing with and why would they come here, within the state, obviously we compete with all the other state universities, and I think primarily with Clemson and University of South Carolina. And for our out-of-state students, we really compete with a lot of the Northeast and some of the Southern private schools, because to an out-of-state student, we're essentially a private school. So the question why Charleston is actually also one that I don't necessarily get asked by students and parents, but it's something I try to answer without them asking, right? So I think what we offer is very unique. One, we offer the history. We're one of the oldest institutions with an excellent academic tradition, 253 years old. And so, but that's not what we are. We're not just old, but we're also very innovative, right? So, as I normally say to my students, we're not just old, but we're also bold. We have a lot of very innovative academic programs here, like the more recent engineering programs and health sciences programs and so forth. But more importantly, our focus is really student. Really, a lot of campuses say, we're student centered. But for some of the smaller colleges, for example, smaller private schools that we compete with, because of their size, they really do not have all the academic options a student might want, right? So, for example, if a student goes to a small college and they started by saying, I want to be an English major, and then 2 years later they said, no, I want to be a business major. Well, many of the small private schools do not have a business school or an engineering program. So for us, compared to these smaller schools, our advantage is that we're a mid-sized school and we have mostly every discipline you could possibly want. And so student could change majors and many of them do multiple times, as you probably well know. Compared to some of our bigger in-state competitions or out-of-state competitions, many of these larger universities, they focus on research, right? So schools like University of South Carolina or Clemson, I would say the majority of their faculty are rewarded for their research, for their productivity in journal publications and PhD students and so forth. But our faculty come to the College of Charleston because they're interested in teaching undergraduate students. So I always tell my students that if you want to go to one of the best undergraduate teaching institution, this is the place for you. Despite the fact that we have now over 10,000 students, we still maintained that small private college mentality, which we were one, 50 years ago, where every student is a person in our class, where our faculty know them by their name, instead of being put into a 200 student large class and where the faculty hardly know anybody's name.
So something that fascinates me is that you have roughly just under 50% of your students are in-state, which tells me that there's a large percentage that are out of state, potentially international. And so I just find that interesting because as a public institution, you would think that in-state residencies would want to take advantage of in-state tuition. So can you talk a little bit, how do you go about reaching your students and reaching students out of state?
So let me first correct you. There's a perhaps slight misunderstanding.
Sure, yeah.
If you look at our freshman class, yes, indeed, we have a slightly larger out-of-state enrollment than we have. But that's just the freshman class. When you put everybody together, the transfer students and so forth, our overall student population is still probably 59% in-state and 41% out-of-state. That being said, yes, we indeed have a much larger out-of-state population than many of our peers. And I think that's primarily because of our reputation as a school of first choice around the nation, and obviously our location being in one of the most desirable cities in Charleston is also a big help. We, to give you a sense of where we are now, we have about 8,000 applications a year from South Carolina, which is slightly up from years ago, maybe 30% up from 4 years ago. But we now have about 18 to 19,000 applications from out of state. So it's close to 3 times the in-state applications, which speaks to the desirability, the reputation of our brand. And in fact, we 4 years ago had a total of about 12,000 applications, evenly split between in-state and out-of-state applications. And our out-of-state applications more than tripled within the last 4 years.
Wow.
I attribute that to our recently acquired a good academic reputation, but also I think we're also riding the wave of Charleston becoming one of the most desirable cities to live in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. I live in about 20 minutes south of Nashville, Tennessee. And so my family, and I have 4 little, excuse me, I have 4 little kids as well. I don't know if your kids are still little or not, but I have 4 kids as well. And we've traveled to Charleston on vacation several times. So you have 4 girls. I have 3 girls and an older son. I don't know what ages they are, but I would imagine there must be a lot, or either today or was a lot of carpooling with you and your wife.
Of course, in fact, my youngest one is going to college this fall, and she has not left yet, but will leave in about a week. And my wife and I have been serving as chauffeurs for the last 30 years. So we're certainly looking for the opportunity to be just on our own and not have to worry about kids.
Absolutely. Purchased a lot of tires on the vehicles, I am sure.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So how do you make sure, as far as that career path, how do you make sure that students become career ready, especially in jobs today that may not exist in 10 years. And then on that flip side, you go, 10 years in the future, you're going to find jobs that don't exist today. So how do you make sure that students are are career ready?
Right. So there are, I think there are several layers of answers to that question. One is that, you alluded to, very few students get to work for the same company throughout their career anymore. Most of the people these days would change at least 4 or 5 times their career throughout their life, and many of them would actually change discipline. So. And on top of that, technology is developing so rapidly that, today the most up-to-date knowledge would be outdated, in 5 years. So I think one way that we think the College of Charleston really prepares our students for success in their life is through this well-rounded liberal arts education that made them more adaptive and to any situation, any technology change. And the other that we're trying to do is, in addition to the well-rounded liberal arts education where they have the global fluency and the communication skills and so forth, we try to get them the practical experience, the real world experience before they graduate. And we certainly partner with our local businesses. For example, we partner with our local hospitality industry for our hospitality and tourism program. We partner with local businesses for our business program. We partner with local industry for our engineering and other STEM programs. 90% of our students graduate with a significant number of hours of what we call experiential learning experience. So that's either you have co-op, you have internships, or you have study abroad, and so forth. So we take experiential learning very seriously on this campus, because I think that would make our graduates job ready on day one when they graduate.
So I would imagine that being able to talk to prospective students and current students as well, and families, your experience must be something that can really sell the institution, as a first generation student, and just really taking that path that you've taken. How are you able to have those conversations and really tell stories and say, hey, prospective student or current student, this was my experience. I was in a similar position as you.
Yeah. So, today, I think if you talk to any professor, their biggest complaint is that our students out of high school are not properly prepared for their college experience. And I think many students also feel the same way, not all, but at least some. When I talk to students, I can really use my own experience to encourage them. If I can do it, I think they can. As I mentioned, I grew up during a very chaotic period in the Chinese history, where elementary education and post-secondary education, everything was interrupted for about 10 years. So my secondary education is almost zero, right? So I had to learn math and English and many of the subjects really on my own. And I don't think any of our students had a poorer preparation than I did when I started college. And if I can do it, if I can overcome all those obstacles. In fact, when I came to the US, I didn't even speak very much English. My understanding of English was to the extent of I want a sandwich, and when they asked me what kind of bread or what kind of meat, then I ran out of vocabulary already. So if I could achieve what I did and get a doctorate degree and so forth, they should be able to achieve far more than that. So I think that experience really helped our students to cope, to face their own challenges.
Well, and you had mentioned that the faculty references the fact that high school students, generally speaking, they don't feel like they're prepared for college. Does the College of Charleston, do you engage with feeder high schools in any capacity?
Yes, certainly we have a school of education, and there's a close partnership between our school of education and the local school district, and on top of that, we have some charter schools where our students would go to and mentor the students, and these are mostly the inner city students. So indeed, we try to do that, and the other thing we're trying to do is to offer more summer programs for high schoolers to come to our campus and provide them with the knowledge as well as some of the skills to prepare them for college when they're still in high school.
How are you engaging alumni today?
Well, we certainly try to engage them, and we throughout the year we have several programs, and many of them really well attended. We have a fall alumni weekend coming up, and we are going to have a big banquet for that, and then in May we have what we call a Charleston affair, where we would literally have a couple of thousand alums, walking around campus. It's probably the largest gathering I've ever seen anywhere, short of a rock band or something. And then on top of that, we try to have affinity-based alumni group that would interact not only among themselves, but come to campus and interact with our students. And we also, we have many alum who move to major metropolitan areas like New York City, Boston, Atlanta, Charlotte, and so forth. I make a point of going to those cities and have alumni events there. And we typically would also sort of on the same trip have a yield event where we recruit students and we meet alum, and oftentimes we mix the two and have alum talk to our potential students that we're trying to recruit. So we also have a lot of publications, both print and electronic, that we send to our alums.
So you have roughly 11,000 students, is that right?
We have roughly 11,000 students, yes.
Okay. How big do you want to get, or how big can you get?
Well, so we are downtown, right in the middle of downtown Charleston, which is a very historic city with very strict building codes and so forth. So I don't think we could grow our student population in any major way. And I certainly think that with the introduction of our new academic programs like engineering, health sciences, health management, and combined business and engineering programs and so forth, we're going to attract some students that previously are not going to be at the College of Charleston. And because of that, we have to grow, but not in any major way. If you were to ask me to make a guess, I think my educated guess would be we could probably move from 11,000 to 12,000, but may not be much beyond that unless we find the land to have a major expansion, which I don't see us able to do.
So I think you answered this, in part here, but, just as far as the future, the College of Charleston, where do you see the institution in 10 years?
So, we had a strategic plan the year I came. This was 4 years ago, and we actually established a clear vision at the time. And the vision is for the College of Charleston to become a national university known for its excellent liberal arts education. And in order to become a national university, and this is based on Carnegie classification and U.S. News and World Report and so forth, we have to become a doctoral degree granting institution first. So last December, we received approval to offer doctoral degrees from the state of South Carolina, and And this August, last month, we had our first PhD student now on campus, and we have several doctoral programs in the pipeline, and hopefully in 10 years, certainly we will be a national university and a one with an excellent academic reputation.
Well, excellent. What was it like to work at Rolls-Royce? I know that was a long time ago, but do you remember those? Do you remember the kind of the pre-academia experiences?
I do a little bit. In fact, I spent 10 years working in industry, thinking that was my chosen career path. But actually, Rolls-Royce really gave me the opportunity to spend some time in the evenings and be an adjunct professor at Purdue. And after teaching as an adjunct for a couple of years, I said, I think that's a better career, better fit for me. And I moved full time into academia. And of course, the rest is history.
Well, excellent. Well, Andrew Hsu, president of College of Charleston. Hey, thank you so very much today for your time.
Oh, thank you, Bradley. It's an honor to be your guest.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.